Kevin Rudd, welcome to your first right-wing convention.
Well, Joe, I've been to a few conventions over the years, but you're right, it's the first from the right. But then again, you're going to the Democrats as well.
I'm going to the Democrats as well for Sky News. What has struck you about this convention? It seems, I know this is your first convention, but it seems a little more somber than the one I went to in 2016.
Well, when Donald Trump came in here last night to the convention, I was here with Therese, you could see on his face that he had been affected by the events of Saturday.
Yeah.
This was not the normal fist-pumping Donald Trump. This was a more reflective Donald Trump. And as others have said to me today, who know the president far better than I do, he's actually been moved by the event itself and, of course, the outpouring of national and international opinion in support of him in terms of this assassination attempt.
There's no doubt, and I was watching it on the screens. I was just outside at that time, and I immediately remarked to the person I was with, if he doesn't have tears, he's very, very close to tears. That's not Donald Trump. He sees that as a real weakness, and so he obviously has been affected, deeply affected by the assassination attempt, as you'd expect.
Well, if it was you or I back in Australia, this would have a profound effect on our psychology, our sense of who we are in national political life. This morning here in Milwaukee, I was able to attend a session with Donald Jr. Small event, but Donald Jr. was asked directly what effect has this shooting has had on his father, to which Donald Jr. said, it's been big. It has caused him to be more reflective. So I think from the family, there is a deep reflection that this guy has had one of those life-changing experiences. Of course, the journalist then asked, how long will it last? And of course, Donald Jr. left that one hanging.
Well, and rightly so, because I mean, Donald Trump, he's very aware of his mortality. When we've played golf previously together, on numerous occasions he'd talk about he had 20 golf carts around him. I could barely hit the ball because they're all the Secret Service and snipers. Well, that's what my excuse. That's all I've got.
Or did you just choose to lose?
No, I didn't lose actually. I won, and he doesn't respect people that don't stand up to him.
That's your story, and you're sticking to it. Yeah, you won.
So, but anyway, he is a slightly more fragile character than we thought, but at the same time, that defiant gesture on Saturday night about fighting, that resonated around the world, and I tend to feel, just speaking to people around the room, that had a big impact on the psyche of the everyday American to say, we've got a president that's really going to fight for us.
Well, here at this convention, and that can be my only barometer, you can plainly see that the entire Republican base has been massively fired up by the events on Saturday. You can see that by the resolve of people. I was sitting just down here last night behind the Texas delegation here at the convention center in Milwaukee. And as President Trump walked into the center, you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
It was a galvanizing moment for this base. The open question of politics is what happens in the next 3 months or so.
Yeah.
And you and I both know a week's a long time in politics.
Very long.
3 months is an eternity.
So let me get on to policy, because I've actually met a few people around here that aren't so wedded to Donald Trump, but they are very strong advocates for the policies. Closing the border, immigration, lower taxes, less regulation. They're opposed to climate change policies. I can't help but think that Australians don't understand, and many people around the world don't understand, that there are deep policy differences between the Republicans and the Democrats, and that is the biggest driver of the political divide here in America.
Well, Joe, I think you're right. I actually sat down yesterday on the drive out to Madison, Wisconsin, the capital of this state, to see the governor. It's about an hour and a half drive, so I actually read the platform from beginning to end. As you probably know, Donald Trump spent a lot of time editing an 84-page document down to 12.
He did, yeah.
Sounds very Trump.
Very Trump.
And then you've got 20 hit points in the middle, which are basically 20 core promises. And if you group those into what they're on about, which is inflation and cost of living, which are on about the future of American manufacturing, which are on about the future of American energy politics, hence your comments about climate change. It's on about the future of American society. and so much of that resonates here with the Republican base, and also about America's future in the region and the world. But you're right, on many of these things, not everyone in this auditorium is totally for each one of those propositions. There are divisions, including on national security. But you're right also that the gap between what the Republicans stand for based on that platform and the Dems is very big indeed. It's quite stark.
And I think that's a big driver of a lot of the advocacy, the partisanship here in American politics, is that policy divide. Because the biggest cheer that we heard here yesterday was when people were on the stage talking about abolishing tax on tips, and that resonates with young people. I mean, it's but Australians and others outside of America have no interest in that. But that's the sort of issue that really galvanises.
Whereas the
voters.
figure given here last night is that hundreds of millions of about, I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like 50, 60, 70 million Americans depend on tips to lift their income to an acceptable level. And so this to me shows everything about the political touch of Donald J. Trump, which is what's going to actually punch through to a group of folks who would either not vote or perhaps vote the other way. And he went straight for their hip pocket.
So you were here in a different capacity when Trump won previously. Do you get a sense that Donald Trump 2.0 is more measured than 1.0?
Measured, I don't think is the right way to look at it. On the policy lines that you've described, Ramaswamy. On the policy lines, we've just had the Speaker, now we've got Ramaswamy. It's a big night here in Milwaukee.
It is, it always, yeah.
And so, on the policy lines, it is sharper and clearer than it was last time round. What I think is different is the aggregation of individuals who would fill the key cabinet and advisory positions, who now approach this with 4 years of experience under their belt. That, therefore, makes it, I think, a more determined policy push. But also, as you and I have both observed as politicians, the bottom line is you see greater discipline in the Trump political campaign as well than you did back then.
Yeah, and I do want to say, I know you've been working the Republicans really hard, and well done on that. I mean, all of them come to me, Larry Kudlow, Robert O'Brien, Pompeo, they've all said, we've been with Kevin Rudd. They're really interested in your observations about China, and they're also understanding that Australia has a really big role to play in being a partner if Trump is elected.
Well, thank you for saying that, and what you did as ambassador is much the same sort of thing. Whoever's the administration, your first responsibility as ambassador is to get to know who could be in next time round.
Yeah.
So, because it's a democracy, anything can happen here. So for the last year that I've been in this job, we've been pretty assiduous at working through all the folks who are likely to move into key positions on foreign policy, on national security policy, on trade policy. Bob Lighthizer, for example, who you know well. The key advisors on domestic policy, and critically on the economy and treasury.
Yeah.
So, as you know, you don't just click your fingers and pick up the phone. Hello, I'm from Australia.
Yeah.
You've actually got to go up to Capitol Hill if they're there, track them down across the country, go and visit them in their home cities, which I've spent a lot of time doing. And I think whatever the outcome on the 5th of November, I think it positions Australia well to handle either a re-elected Democrat administration or, as the polls would indicate at present, an elected or re-elected Donald Trump.
So what's interesting to me is, speaking to senior Democrats, I know you do as well, there is a level of despair. The despair started with the performance at the debate a few weeks ago, and people circling Joe Biden thinking he had to go. But obviously after Saturday night, they're in absolute despair. You know Joe Biden, I know Joe Biden. He's the sort of person that never gives up, and yet his own party is in despair and needs him to give up if he's going to win.
Well, the bottom line is these folks are expressing a point of view here.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, if you know Biden well, as we do, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Catholic, working class background, and very determined. At the same time, what you're also indicating is right, and that is you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to see where all the opinion polls in the 7 battleground states have been headed now for quite some time. And I think what will be galvanizing here in the United States will be the impact of the wash-through of, let's call it, the court cases, the assassination.
Which was an amazing outcome. I mean, Mar-a-Lago, in my view, was the most serious of all the court cases, and that was thrown out by the judge the other day.
So you got the wash-through politically of the court cases, you got the wash-through of this extraordinary act of violence last Saturday, which everyone back home in Australia, both sides of politics, have legitimately condemned. And then thirdly, the wash-through of this, and the JD Vance announcement.
Yep.
And so how this translates through into hard polling data in the battleground states, and whether the number of those states is increased to include Minnesota, we just heard from them tonight, to include Virginia, which we heard Youngkin yesterday, to include New Hampshire, to include New Mexico, states which are usually Dem and not Republican. So how that plays through, way beyond my pay grade and way beyond my legitimate entitlement to comment or observe as an ambassador.
Sure. Well, I can help you here. I mean, it's clear that there is a momentum behind the Republicans, but it can turn. And you know, the issue will be, at this stage, if Donald Trump gives a measured speech on Thursday night, he can win by 7 points. If he gives an acrimonious speech, a traditional speech, then he's going to bring Biden back into the fold and into play.
Well, certainly when you look at the new political team around President Trump, led by Susie Wiles, it's been a highly disciplined performance. We saw that evidenced here just yesterday when the president entered into this, shall we say, stadium of those who love him. There was an opportunity to speak differently. He chose not to speak. If that remains his campaign discipline for the period ahead, it becomes a formidable political challenge for the Democrats heading right through until the 5th of November. For us in Australia, though, I just say this, doesn't matter whether you vote Labor, vote Liberal, vote National back home. The really good thing about the United States is brand Australia is in good working order.
It is,
And therefore, we are in a good position to work with whichever party is elected. If the American people vote for Donald Trump and for JD Vance, Australian government, led by Anthony Albanese, will be in there working hard, positively, constructively, with incoming Republican administration from day one. That's as it should be, as it has been in the past.
So that first phone call between Albanese and Trump, I can give you a couple of tips how to handle that.
It will go better than Malcolm's.
I know, I hope so. But importantly...
That's a low benchmark.
Well, it is a very low benchmark. But importantly, you know, Trump forms an opinion early on. He's a visual sort of person. And you know, what's your plan for that first phone call? I mean, let me make a suggestion.
I'm all ears, Joe.
Well, I mean...
Just between you and I and the Sky viewers back home.
Yeah, but I would... I think Anthony Albanese should give Donald Trump something, particularly on subs, like the second round of checks or something, and give him a win in that early phone conversation to show that it's a symbolic way of saying this is how we work together.
Well,
I'll leave that to you, though.
Thank you, and you'll appreciate I won't talk about that on air.
No, sure.
But you're right, initial encounters are important, and not just with this president, but with many of them. Many of them take from their briefing notes, as you know. Donald Trump is of a different type. He reacts to you as he sees you. And he saw you, Joe Hockey, as an easy beat on the golf course, and that's why he took you out there. But no, you worked the Trump administration really well. The challenge will be first encounters and how we manage that in a positive way if President Trump is elected. If President Biden's elected or re-elected, or the Democrats are, of course, all those relationships are working each day of the week on the issues of the world today, as you'd expect. And
finally, do you think that other countries are overreacting to the possibility that Trump's going to be elected? I mean, you've worked the Republicans, you've seen the people that are around Donald Trump now. They're a very different lot to what was around him back in 2016. But, you know, do you think that they're overreacting to him at the moment?
Well, I think
It's loud. Yeah.
that cheer was for Joe in his question.
Sorry.
What I say to many ambassadors in Washington is it's really important to chill.
Yeah.
Just chill. The simple reason is if President Trump is elected on the 5th of November, we're not going over some chasm. For us in Australia and for allies in the United States, this is a perfectly navigable and manageable set of relationships for the next 4 years. And everyone needs to have that just as a discipline in their mind. If instead you think, my God, this is beyond the pale and reach for your smelling salts, well, you know something? It's going to cruel you from day one. That's actually the wrong conclusion. So I say a lot to the Euros along these lines, which is chill, Bill.
Okay, so final question. You've been texting and dealing with JD Vance. Is that awful bit of yours a way of showing your support for JD Vance?
No, I like this music here. I actually rather like Hillbilly Elegy.
No, I'm talking about the beard.
Oh, this?
Yes.
Yeah, but mine's a grey beard. He's got a black beard.
Right.
He's a serious pirate. I'm more of a retired university professor.
Right.
So there's kind of a bit of a difference there. But, you know, he's going to be pretty interesting on the campaign trail. I listened carefully to what Donald Jr. said today. They want JD Vance out in Pennsylvania and also dipping into Michigan and here in Wisconsin, because these are old industrial states, and those who got left behind as his family did with the Appalachian background. So I think in this part of the geography, he will be, firstly, a useful asset for them for the election. Secondly, I think what President Trump may have in mind is how do you build a long-term machine beyond 28?
Where does it leave left-wing politics that you had the Teamsters Union up here at a Republican convention saying vote for the right?
Well, I'm waiting for Setka to set himself up in Australia to address the next federal council of the Liberal Party. And
I'm not sure he'll be invited.
Well, CFMEU, Teamsters, Jimmy Hoffa.
And it was the Teamsters that delivered John F. Kennedy the nomination all those years ago. So,
as we say in politics, it's a complex business.
It is a complex business. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jim. Well done.
All the best.